Hi everyone. So after making the Sally doll, my daughter said to me that I should make a Jack, so I decided to make one today. So first of all, I started off with the body of a Skellington doll from Monster High. I took the head off because it was completely the wrong shape, because obviously Jack's head's quite round. So what I did was sculpted a head, and to do that I got some masking tape and rolled it into a ball, and then attached it to the top of the neck with another couple of bits of masking tape. Then I used epoxy sculpt to sculpt his head. I've used Das clay recently for some other stuff, but I prefer how epoxy sculpt works, and I like the fact that epoxy sculpt, when it sets, it's harder. Obviously the downside is it's more expensive, but I do prefer it. So I decided for this to make it with a epoxy sculpt. So I just mix the two parts together, which you have to do for about a minute or so, just to make sure it's thoroughly mixed. And then once I had completely mixed the epoxy sculpt, then it was a case of squeezing it between my fingers to make it nice and flat, and then applying it around the masking tape, and then smoothing it all down. And to smooth it down, what I did was I took the ball off the head and rolled it between the palms of my hands to make it nice and rounded, and then placed it back on the head. And then I got like a line of clay which I wrapped around the neck and then attached to the head to make sure that it stuck to the neck of the doll. I chopped off the wide bit of the neck of the doll body and added some hot glue to lengthen it, because when I first put it on, it was too low on the neck. And Jack's got quite a long, skinny neck, so obviously I did have to tweak that bit a bit. But then once I did that and attached the head, then it was a case of adding the details. So I just used this nail dotting tool, which I like to use for clay sculpting, and marked out where the eyes were going to go and the nose is going to go. At this stage I realised I'd done the nose in the wrong position, so I did tweak the nose later on and make it a bit higher up, because the nose was a bit too low down once I put the eyes in place. It was awkward doing this bit because obviously, because the epoxy sculpt hadn't set, every so often I kept knocking the head off the doll. But once I'd finished marking out the basic outline for the face, it was just a case of making sure that neck was nice and secure before I left it to dry overnight. And I decided to do the eyes a little bit recessed, because I thought it was going to look weird if I just paint the eyes on the surface. Because looking at like models of Jack and stuff, they are recessed into the head, so because they're eye sockets at the end of the day. So I just squished down the clay and smoothed it out with my dotting tool. And I didn't mind the little bit of texture inside the eye, to be fair, but I did smooth it out later on, which you'll probably see later. And once I did both eyes, then it was just a case of going over the mouth again. Obviously at this stage I've only done a single line for the mouth. The horizontal line for the mouth. But afterwards you'll see in a bit I do all the little vertical lines that are on Jack's sculpt, which are for his teeth. But here I'm just smoothing things down a little bit and just defining those shapes a bit and getting it how I want it. And then I made the line for his mouth a bit deeper, and then just smoothed out the edges with my finger. And basically the best thing I find to smooth down epoxy sculpt is just to put a little bit of water on your fingers and then use that to smooth the clay down. It works quite well. I should have removed the little dents from where his nose used to be, but I forgot about that, but never mind. I can always fill that in later on. Now I've painted him and I can see them a little bit, I can always fill them a little bit and then go over it, so it's no biggie, I can fix that later on. So here I'm putting the little vertical lines that are on his mouth to represent where his teeth are. And I decided to do these recessed as well, because it's just going to look better than just painting the mouth on directly onto the face. It's going to look better if there's some depth to it. And then once I did that, then it was a case of just leaving it to dry and fully set overnight. And once the head had set, then I decided to do the outfit first before I painted the face. And for this, I just did it the easiest way I possibly could, which is basically fabric and a load of hot glue. I could have sewn it, but I'm not that keen a seamstress. Like, sometimes I'll sew stuff and I'll go through phases. Other times I just get bored and just think, nah. Today was one of the days where I was like, yeah, I don't really fancy sewing. So I cheated. So what I did was cut out the basic trouser shape for Jack. And at the minute they look a bit big, but once they're turned inside out, it'll make them skinny because he's got quite skinny trousers on. And then what I did was hot glued them together. And so instead of sewing all the seams, I hot glued all the seams. Occasionally I stuck my finger to it, which was a bit of a pain, but on the whole I found that worked out better. It held it nice and secure. There was only one seam I had to repair when I turned the trousers inside out because I was a bit too heavy-handed, but other than that it was fine, and they've held together well on the doll. Plus the bulk of the hot glue at the seam takes up some of that width a little bit to make them fit a bit skinnier on the skeletal legs of the Skellington doll. And the reason I decided to use a Skellington doll is because I didn't want to try and sculpt a skeleton. Goodness me, that would take me forever. And I'm not the best at hands, so I just decided to focus on sculpting the head. So once I stuck the trousers together, as you can see, with plenty of hot glue, then I turned them inside out and fitted them onto the doll. And I decided not to show you how I made the jacket because basically it's just pieces of fabric glued onto him to make it look like a jacket because the jacket was doing my head in. All I did was I got a skinny piece of fabric and wrapped it around each arm and glued that in first. Then a strip of fabric to get the shape at the front, which I then cut and glued around him. And then I got a longer piece of fabric at the back to make the tails of his jacket. But it's all in pieces and it was all hot glued, and it took me a long time because it was a bit of a faff. I've never tried to make a suit and I never really want to. So yeah, I didn't film this because otherwise the video would probably be an hour long, just me faffing around trying to get the jacket to look right. And then I got a piece of slightly off-white fabric, it's like a cottony fabric, that I stuck underneath because I noticed on the pictures I saw for reference of Jack, you don't actually see the bones in his chest, it's just like a shirt underneath. And then to make the spiky collar thing, I just cut that out with cardboard and then painted it black, and then added the details later on once the black was dry. Once I did that, then it was a case of just painting those details that I'd already sculpted into the face. One thing I do like about Jack Skellington is his face is nice and simple. I suppose if I would have been doing like one of the expressions on his face, it might have been a bit more complicated, but I just went for the basic sort of Jack Skellington face. So, you know, that sort of slightly evil grin. And I did these details first before painting the head white, just because if there's any little slips or splodges, I could cover them with the white paint later on. So I went through all those little lines and made sure that they showed through. Oh, that's one thing I didn't. I've just noticed one thing I didn't do. I've got like a little line that goes underneath his eye I haven't painted. Oh well, I'll touch that up later on. So then once I did those basic details, I then painted the face white just to make sure it was that nice white colour, because the epoxy sculpt is white but it dries as a slightly sort of grey white. I wouldn't say it was like a really bright white, and I wanted Jack's face to be whiter, so I went over with white paint and then carefully went over any details and stuff. Like going around the teeth and stuff was a bit hard, but I got there. You know, it's just one of them where I had to switch to like my teenish brush I've got with a fine tip on it, and then touch up all the areas around the teeth. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And then just smoothed down the paint around the rest of his head and made sure it was as smooth and as blended as possible. And obviously I tried carefully not to touch the black because I didn't want any big blobs of grey anywhere, because that would just look weird. And then once I painted the face, then it was a case of painting the pinstripes on his suit, which is the bit that took me the longest, because at the end of the day acrylic paint's not fabric paint, so it kept applying quite dryly and bitty, so I had to keep tweaking it. And I had to go over the pinstripes on his suit a couple of times to get the white to show, because it had just soaked in and looked grey. But once I did it, I was quite happy with how the suit turned out. It helped to disguise any of those weird bits where the bits of fabric overlapped, because obviously, like I said, I didn't make the jacket properly. And as you can see on this bit, I'm just adding the details to the neck piece, and there's just two little eyes because it's like a bat thing around his neck, and then stripes on what's I'm assuming is like the wings. It's like a bat or spider type thing. And yeah, that was it. So once I finished painting his pinstripes, he was done. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.